So, like, if you want to just skip, so like, I mean, if y'all got the picture from the last slide, just like by whatever, if you guys want to have like verbal cues or whatever, of like, what are your interpretations of the red light district? That's what I specifically focused on in Amsterdam. So, if like, what's the first thing that comes to your all's mind when I like think of
Prostitution.
Okay. What about like the culture, the narrative?
I'm not raising my hand, I'm just like 10.
Okay.
The windows and how they advertise themselves through windows.
Okay. So what about like, as far as, you know, y'all know probably because we all live in the U.S., like what the culture, what the public opinion is of prostitution. What do you think of the public opinion?
I think it's normal.
Normal?
Laid back.
Yeah.
Back. Okay. Yeah. So this is very much like what people typically think of the red light district, like red lights, we're not in town. And you want to go again. So as far as Amsterdam goes, they prostitution's always been allowed. And the policies and stuff on it have kind of swayed, they have been flowed across, and it's been around since like the 14th century. But however, like legal brothels were only recently allowed in 2000, which I guess is not so recent. 16 years ago. And so with the legalization of brothels, that was intended to make it more of a safe space so that there could be that better transparency between the government and between the prostitutes and brothel owners and stuff like that. So, and also because in Amsterdam, like the government owns all the property, and they just lease it to the brothel owner. So it's like that transparency also helps for them to know, like it was intended to help crack down on trafficking and things like that. You know, like they want to be like, okay, well, you know, it was always accepted. So they're like, how do we kind of maneuver this so we can make it safer? And it did. Offering like legal brothels and stuff like that, what it mainly did too was not only the safer working space, but also like healthcare and things like that are typical complaints of prostitutes, where they're like, we want safety to be able to, like, they have buttons in the brothels. If there's ever an issue, they can press the button and like police frequent the area. There's raids typically, which leaves a negative connotation, but they go through and make sure everything is running up to like code. Like if you think of like a health department or whatever, like that's typically what they would do, the brothels, healthcare and all that good stuff. However, what was often happening, and I'm gonna spend a lot of the time talking about something called Project 1012. And that's a government policy that was implemented in 2007. So they looked at this, and you know, the red light district, I'm pretty sure all of us knew what that was when I said it, and it's known worldwide. And so like that attracts a lot of tourism, and a lot of people want to like see this, and especially if you think of prostitution being like this hush thing and illegal most places, like people, that attracts tourism even more. And so there's this rationalization of Project 1012 with that increase of tourism and stuff. You get an influx of people. People are bringing their own kind of cultural lenses and interpretations of what they expect the red light district to be, which is like I asked all of you, you know, like if you were to go, like what would you expect to find? And there's like that lens that you see through of what to find, and then what you expect your experience to be. And so there's like these tourists going in being like let's have like, you know, like this is a free-for-all kind of thing and a fun town or whatever. And so that there's places called coffee shops, which contrary to like what Molly would kind of dig, it's not coffee. It's like places where people like smoke pot and kind of like you can think of like hookah bars with weed because it's legal there also. And so increased crime and increased violence against the women. Like people are going through cultural lenses, and you're typically thinking about like viewing women as like things to consume, and then there was violence against the women happening and stuff. So there was one perspective of the government's perspective saying like, let's crack down. We want to crack down on trafficking, but now like we have this like new problem kind of coming up. And so they did Project 1012, and their rationalization was, okay, let's crack down on all of the violence and drugs and stuff like that. But then there's also a reality, or a different version of the reality. You want to go? So what happens is that if you can think of like a kaleidoscope, you all looked ever through a kaleidoscope, and there's like different things happening from all different angles. And what the Project 1012, in order to understand the prostitution in this area, like the culture, and there's not just one perspective, you have to like look at all the different perspectives. And especially when we're talking about like policy and how it affects the perspective of the sex workers, the citizens who like are living this, and the tourists who are like what their expectations are when they're coming into it and what they leave having done or interacted with, and then like the trafficking and the violence and stuff. So, and all of these things are like working together. So the government, through the perspective of the sex workers, they are pretty much left voiceless. Like cutting to the chase with the Project 1012 initiative, they're left voiceless because the government is like, the tourists or the sex workers are like, this is about money, because this red light district area is worth a lot of money, like as far as real estate and stuff like that. And to increase the economy in that area, they are gentrifying this area. I don't know if any of you know what that means, but it's like pretty much you're wanting rich people to come in, and by doing that, you're kind of like isolating the people who are already there who can't like fit into this new like culture that you're trying to create in this area. Like totally butchering it, and then you could like go look up what it means, but it's pretty messed up what they're doing in this area. And that's the sex workers' perspective, where they're like, you know, they give, the government's giving a reason of like trafficking and stuff, but it's about money. And it's about wanting to close us down. And so from what's happened with this is after Project 1012 in 2007, they've cut down they've closed 25% of the windows. What this is doing is like making other issues pop up where there's competition for windows. They're offering brothel owners huge incentives to like payoffs to be like sell back to us because, and so what that's doing is what the culture was before was intertwined, like connected community, and like entrepreneurs and stuff like that were owning brothels, and then with this tourism uprise, they're bringing in like pimps or people who are from like Eastern Europe coming in and wanting to own brothels also for trafficking purposes. And so this is kind of going in and kind of like crashing their tight circle that they had in this district. And they're definitely feeling that. So with the sex workers like that are left, they're trying to preserve like this culture that is long-standing, and they're like, you know, the reason you have tourists and stuff like that is largely because of what we do here in the history and everything behind it. The government's like putting in like hotels and eateries and like places like that of these old brothels that they're closing, and like they host a radio station out of one deserted brothel. And this is what I have after the Project 1012 and all the window closings. This is what it looked like before. People kind of shopping through here, like looking through the windows, and then this is what it looks like now. And I got that off of a prostitute who works there right now. She has a whole Twitter and blog, and that was posted a month ago. That was March. And so this is also like, you can't see it, but there's like a really cool art on the wall, like a naked woman. And this is all reconstruction of what they're doing. And so it's kind of like tearing apart culture a little bit of like what, and not only that, but leaving them with no livelihood. Right, so they didn't just close these brothels, they left these women with no recourse. And so when this is what they're doing, like that increases the violence and the trafficking. So if they're like, I'm still gonna prostitute because that's where I make my money, that's like what I know, and that's, I didn't want the closures. So that increases trafficking, they're in unsafe conditions, if they are having problems, they can't really do much about it, and the street walking is still illegal. And so they're taking people back to their houses and, you know, things like that. And so what I have this in a circle for isn't necessarily that one leads into another, it's just they're all kind of clashing. And it's the overhead of like the government and like the policies that they're implementing. And I had some YouTube videos, I don't think I have time to share them, but.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, the first one was from a woman who was a prostitute for like 20 years, and she started something called Proud. And she was, she's a retired sex worker, and she funds like a little museum info desk thing in the red light district. And it's an advocacy network that they've started to say like, we need sex worker rights and stop closing our brothels. And they did a march through the red light district up to the government building last year. And so at the end of last year, the government's like, okay, we'll officially stop closing their buildings. And so that's done, but they're like, all right, damage has already been done. Like trafficking and like all of this crap you should have figured out before. And then the next one was just saying like, reinforcing what I said, that there's a gray area that's created with making it, like closing down the brothels. It's not just a cultural thing, but it's creating a tension between the locals of them saying like, I would like a nicer looking area, so I'm not completely bummed about it. And then that makes them not like the sex workers because they're the reasons for the red light district like, continuing. And so there's this like I said, everything kind of clashing with each other.
Time.